Hi, my name is Karen, and I'm an American lay student of Ajahn Suchart, or Ajahn Suchart Abhijato, who's given me his permission to read his books to you for free. Ajahn Suchart's books and talks are always free. Any ads you may see or hear in this recording have been put there by the platform you are using to listen or view with for its own revenue, in exchange for letting us use their platform for free. Please forgive me for any mispronunciations of names, places, or words, and for any background noises, as I'm just making these recordings in my apartment with an unruly dog and in the middle of a city. We are resuming reading today, Beyond Birth, Ajahn Suchart Abhijato, an Autobiography, published in December of 2021. We are resuming on page 190. We are still in chapter 4. And this section is titled Being Strict. At Wat Yannasangwararam, if it was not the time to come out to the sala or to get hot water from our own kuti area, we were not allowed to do so, because this means we were deceived by the kilesas. Luangta would chase us away. The pana, juices or hot cold drink break, was allowed only once daily. Luangta would come around to check to make sure that we finished as soon as possible and return to our own kuti, because to have a conversation, at best, could make the mind wander, and at worst could start a discussion. So Luangta would keep coming around to check on us. While seeing us there on his first round was okay, if he came around a second time and still saw us there, he would ask what we are still doing there. If this happened, it would be best to leave at once, otherwise we would likely be scolded. Luangta also patrolled very quietly around the monastery regularly, so we would not hear him coming to see if there was a conversation going on in any kuti, or if anyone was drinking tea or coffee during the meditation times. If he saw multiple pairs of shoes in front of a kuti, he would know that monks were socializing and would break it up. Also, we were not supposed to be sleeping during that time either, as sleeping too much was not allowed. After Venerable Ajahn Mun passed away, Luangta went to stay at Huasai for 4 years. He was especially strict with the monks who went along with him during that time. If they did not meditate, they did not last there. There is a quote on page 191. We have to depend on the Dhamma that Luangta showed us and try to apply it when practicing meditation so that it would be developed in our mind. Once we have it here, we will be able to end suffering and stress. There's another quote, and it is on page 192 next. Why are you still here? How long do you need to eat? Why aren't you back walking or sitting meditation by now? Luangta would always be strict with how we spent our time. He did not want us to waste time, but to keep meditating and cultivating our mind. Taking too long for eating and chit-chatting is just useless activity. Continuing this section on page 193. In addition, Luangta did not allow the monks to receive any secular news from outside. No radio, TV, newspapers, and of course, had mobile phones been developed then, they would not have been allowed. When we read the news, the mind cooks up thoughts and stories, making us forget the mantra Buddho. The mind that is proliferating thoughts won't be able to reach calmness. But it can be done if we know the factors that lead calmness to arise. The factors are staying alone in solitude and staying far away from things that will bother the mind and pull it into thinking about this or that. We have to stay in a monastery, in the forest or in the mountains, and with a teacher. We should be alone most of the time, except when we have to perform our duties, because the body still needs taking care of, like keeping it clean and giving it food. We also have to carry out monastic routines like cleaning up and putting things away properly. But when carrying out these duties, we should not be chatting with others. Everyone should perform their tasks by themselves and with mindfulness. If we can live like this, then achieving the result can be guaranteed. The next section begins on page 194 and is titled, The Value of Teachers Who Have Realized the Truth. In the past, lay people dared not enter Luangta's monastery out of fear of his fierceness. They would come for the annual Katina ceremony, make their offerings, receive the blessing, and then leave. They did not dare to stay for the night. So Ban Tad was very quiet in those days. Staying with a teacher who had experience helped me gain much knowledge. I learned various methods and stratagems for fasting, fighting fear, and dealing with suffering. I also learned the details about the various levels of attainment. Listening to the Dhamma talks from an enlightened person is very different from listening to teachers who are not enlightened. The differences are in the precision of the teachings and the encouragement one gets from listening to them. Those who had still not succeeded in their practice could teach only from their imagination. They speak lacking confidence and clarity, and their listeners are left unassured about following their teachings. It is not the same when listening to the Lord Buddha or the Arahants who speak with confidence and clarity. Their listeners are, therefore, left with no doubt or uncertainty. So this is the benefit of staying with teachers who have attained enlightenment. They know the way of practice, so they know when we are doing it wrong and can warn us to stop. If we don't stay with those who have practice, we'd never know, because we'd continue with our old ways, thinking that they were all right. Our teacher is the Dhamma. If we talk back when they are teaching us, that is just displaying our kilesas. If we want to argue with our teachers, then we shouldn't stay and listen from them. Our teachers didn't beg us to come learn from them. So if we decide to learn from them, this means we should accept their Dhamma. If we argue, the moment we speak, it is just the kilesas coming out. At least we should listen to what the teacher has to say and consider it. Depending on the individuals they are teaching, teachers will use different strategies to train and to guide them, always within reason. If we have doubts, we can ask them at the appropriate time. While they are still talking, we should not interrupt them. The questions should be based on reason and ought to be regarding the practice. We should not ask silly questions based simply on our feelings, or to express our opinions that things should be this way or that way. We should not think like this. If we have such opinions, we should just keep them to ourselves. In order to practice meditation, we need a teacher in the beginning to continually guide and encourage us. We must have calmness as a foundation before we go off on our own to seek seclusion to experience the real thing, just like entering the examination hall. If we have Suttamaya Panya, wisdom resulting from study, and Chittamaya Panya, wisdom resulting from reflection, and want to test our level of Bhavanamaya Panya, wisdom resulting from mental development, then we have to be alone and enter the examination hall. This is an advanced practice that requires sufficient mindfulness, concentration, and wisdom as protection before our teacher will let us do it. If we are still deficient, we should not attempt it, because we would be like an infant who still needs our parent to support, guide, and teach us. When we have grown up and are able to depend on ourselves, then we can go off on our own little by little. This is, therefore, the value of having a teacher. When we describe our problems to him, he can tell us the solutions immediately. Our mind is still not good enough. It still doesn't have wisdom. What it has are the kilesas, which continue to disparage us and make us discouraged, weary, and unmotivated to practice. But if we stay with the teacher, he will always be around to guide us. There's a quote on page 196 next. People tend to be afraid to think about death. However, to do it has real benefits because it helps us become less deluded. We are deluded in being attached to various things that we will lose one day. We think that this body is our self, so we do not want it to die. However, if we keep thinking about it, we will get to the truth that will help us let go, not being attached, so when the time comes for the parting, we will not suffer. This is the point where wisdom arises. Next, we are starting Chapter 5 on page 197, which is titled, Entering the Stream of Practice. When we contemplate with wisdom, we discover that the thing that dies is not us. And Chapter 5 begins on page 198 with a section subtitled, We Can Make It. One year, when I was at Bantad, it got really cold. The temperature went down to as low as 6 degrees Celsius, but we still had to go out for morning alms. At that time, the road was still laterite gravel and not paved with asphalt. In the mornings, we had to walk barefoot during alms round. Every step on the gravel felt like stepping on chunks of ice. It was excruciating. But when we saw Luangta, who was much older than we were, doing it, we pushed on. It was good training. If we didn't have such a strong leader to demonstrate how to deal with such discomfort, nobody would have done it. We had him as our example because he had gone through everything, and his mind stayed so calm that things like that didn't bother him. His mind was not concerned about what happened to his body or feelings. His mind only acknowledged the pain, but it did not let the feeling manifest itself in thoughts like, oh, so much pain, I can't take it anymore. It didn't add anything like that. The mind would just note the pain and then let it go. It's just pain. The difference is in how the mind is conditioned, using Dhamma or kilesas. If it is conditioned by the kilesas, then the mind will be disturbed by the pain. If it uses Dhamma, then it will be okay. The next section begins on page 199 and is titled, One Strategy to Torture the Kilesas. Living with other meditators showed me many strategies for eliminating the kilesas. One I learned at Bantad was fasting. In the beginning, I just noticed that some monks sitting near me kept disappearing from time to time. I thought they had gone home or were attending to personal business somewhere. When I asked another monk about this, he said they were fasting. When that happened, those who were fasting did not have to come out for the normal activities, such as going out for morning alms or participating in joint tasks. They only had to take care of their personal space because they were focused on solitude, not having to be distracted by sights, sounds, smells, tastes, and tactile sensations. When fasting, they would only meditate. When I first read Luangta's book, Patipada, Venerable Acharya Moon's Path of Practice, he explained the benefits of fasting, but I never tried it while meditating at home, thinking that I was pretty good to be able to eat only one meal a day. However, when I saw other monks at the monastery fasting, I was encouraged to try it to see its effects. Fasting sets up the situation of suffering from hunger. When hunger has arisen, there are two ways to quell it: finding something to eat or stopping our mind. Fasting means that we would not find food to quell the hunger. So the only way to do it is by meditating to gain peace of mind, because 90% of hunger comes from the mind, not the body. The body only provides 1/10 of the intensity of the hunger. But if the mind even begins to think about food, saliva already begins to flow. So when we fast, it is like a boxer who enters the ring, no longer just hitting the punching bag. We are now fighting with passions and desires, so we cannot take it easy. We have to be very strict with sitting and walking meditation. If we get tired when doing sitting meditation, we need to get up to do walking meditation instead, until we are worn out, and then go back to sitting meditation again. Fasting also helps us to try harder, because then we are like a boxer in the arena. You cannot just stand around awkwardly, but have to bring out all your skills and techniques to fight in order to not get knocked down. When I fasted and created a condition of suffering from hunger, I had to find a way to fight it, and that was only through meditation. Sitting meditation could calm my mind, and my hunger would go away, so that I could do walking meditation with ease. However, after a little while, the strength of my samadhi would wane, and thoughts about food would begin to proliferate again. So I had to go back to sitting meditation until the mind calmed down and the hunger disappeared again. I would sit until my body was tired, change to walking meditation, and continue to meditate like that all day and all night. I could not lie down to go to sleep because hunger would come back, so I did not want to sleep. My mind had to be continually controlled by mindfulness and wisdom. Sometimes I had to consider food as being disgusting, so I could stop imagining things about food. When I considered it like this, the desire to eat food would reduce. Or sometimes I had to pressure the mind to resist the thoughts and bring out the Dhamma, which meant developing sati, samadhi, and panya. But when I relaxed my efforts, the kilesas came out again and went out of control. For example, on days when I got sleepy after the meal, when I returned to the kuti, I wanted to put my head down on a pillow instead of doing walking or sitting meditation. If I started to do sitting meditation, after a short time, my head would drop. In this way, fasting supported my perseverance. I would alternate my routine and fast sometimes for 3 days, sometimes 5 days, then go back to eating for 2 days, and then back to fasting again. Meanwhile, I would watch my body because too much fasting can hurt the stomach. There is a quote in between the text here on page 201 that I'll read for you now. The mind mainly gets disturbed by bodily issues, not by much else. During fasting, the hunger pangs would be so severe. If I stayed still, the mind would keep thinking about food all the time, causing acute suffering. I had to douse it with sitting meditation to calm my mind. Once the mind was calm, the thoughts about food would disappear. So I realized that most of my hunger really came from my mind. And we're resuming on 202. Another good thing about fasting was that before I began doing it, I would feel hungry in the evening and start to think about food. However, once I had been fasting for a while, I would stop thinking so much about food, because if I could go without food for 3 or 4 days and still be okay, not eating anything in the evening should not be a problem. Also, after fasting for 3 or 4 days, everything would taste good, even just plain rice. So fasting was good for me because it helped me meditate diligently. Over a period of 2 years, I used a fasting technique where I would alternate between fasting and eating. I tried to see how long I would be able to fast, and the longest was 9 days, after which my mind was not so good. It didn't think about meditating and just wanted to sleep because I had no strength. I was exhausted. It didn't want to meditate, it only wanted to sleep. At that point, I reminded myself that I should not fast to beat my own record, but only to boost the meditation. If I was too tired to meditate, then I should not be fasting. I eventually found that fasting for 5 to 7 days worked best. For the first 3 days, the hunger was very bad, but after 3 days, the hunger pains would subside. For the fasting monks, Luangta would allow them to drink some milk. Back then, there were no milk boxes. We would have sweetened condensed milk mixed with Ovaltine. 1 drink per day prevented serious exhaustion. In the afternoon, we were allowed to have a panna drink, which was usually a cocoa drink, or sometimes Luangta would send chocolates to us fasting monks, but never to the non-fasting monks. So during my fasting periods, I would get some chocolate. Another benefit of fasting was that I did not have to meet the tiger, as we referred to Luangta, at the sala, because we had to be on our guard all the time during the meal. Sometimes when monks did not want to face the tiger, many would choose to fast, especially during the rains retreat. Sometimes half of the monks would disappear from the sala to fast so that they could avoid the tiger's growls. And we're going to end there today on page 202 and resume in the next recording on page 203 in a new section entitled Medicine. Have a great rest of your day. I'll see you next time with Metta. Bye-bye.